morning, everybody. Good afternoon, fellow East Coasters, as of this minute. Hope everybody's doing good during what I think many of us would consider the busiest month of the year. Certainly, I can say that for us. We don't need to hesitate there, but I have a feeling I would not be alone with this crowd here. Um, Great to see you. We got a lot of familiar faces here. I see some names I don't recognize. We got a pretty full house here. But just tell us where you're at in the country. That's always fun for us to know. For those of you that are brand new, I'm Matt Carpenter. I'm a founder of College Aid Pro. I am just north of Boston in the Salem, Mass, the Halloween capital of the world here. So festive time around here. And Peggy, the fairy godmother of financial aid, speaking of Halloween, there she is. I got to dress you up, Peggy.
I know. I really do need to get an outfit.
There you go, fellow New Jersey. But Peggy's out there in Seattle, originally from New Jersey. Like she
I'm
likes
a
to.
Jersey girl. Yeah, Basking Ridge. Grew up in New Providence, not far from Basking Ridge.
There we go. Yeah, so as always, very well represented geographically. Always kind of fun for us to see. What we're going to do today. As always, we'll kind of talk some housekeeping stuff, and we always have people that are brand new, kind of a new wave of folks. We're actually our colleague Anne Marie. Some of you know her. She's our high school partnership coordinator. This past week, she was out in Virginia at their school counselor conference for the state. So we got a bunch of new folks we want to welcome to the community from down there in Virginia, and we'll talk a little bit how we partner with high schools, how we support you all as school counselors, and then the content today is really focused on the CSS profile. We'll also, just as we typically do here, talk latest and greatest with the FAFSA. Peg will get you up to speed there. And we'll give you just kind of an abbreviated presentation of the CSS profile. This is a presentation that we're currently giving multiple times a day right now to different high school partners and things like this, which is just walking parents and in some cases students through the CSS profile, and not just the mechanics of completing it, but best practices, right? Do we answer questions that are optional? How do we answer that question? How much can we pay for college each year? How do we value our home and businesses, right? All these tricky questions. What if we're divorced and separated? So this is a presentation that we give all the time. We are giving it for the East Coast. I'm going to share a link here. Or Peg, if you can grab those links, do you have them?
Yeah, I got them.
So next week at 7 Eastern time, let's see, let me make sure I get the dates correct. 7 p.m. Eastern time, 10:23. Okay, so that is next. What is that? A week from today, right? A week from today,
Yeah.
it's 7 Eastern time. For all of our East Coast families and high schools, we're giving this walk through the CSS profile. So if you want to invite your families, share that as a resource, please do. Again, it's strictly an educational webinar. These are just for high school partners and their families. And then we're doing the West Coast and kind of mountain range. We are doing 10:24 at 6 Pacific time. So again, and Peg, if you can share that link, please.
Yep, they're both in there.
Good, appreciate that. So just share that link with your families. Again, we're going to guide them through the CSS profile from A to Z, not only the mechanics, but also best practices, strategy, etc. So again, I'm Matt Carpenter. We've been doing this for quite a while as a team at College Aid Pro. And again, our deal is to educate families, educate parents, students, and then again, be a support system for school counselors. For those of you that are brand new to us, let me just give you a quick tour in terms of exactly how we do that. And we take this two-pronged approach, right? A part of it is education, a part of it is software. So we provide this curriculum, this financial aid and scholarship curriculum, through all major pain points of the process, right? So we probably can't see this too well, and unfortunately my Zoom in is not cooperating. Okay, but so we come in the spring and then back again in the fall, right? For kind of, and we invite everybody to. Here's how financial aid and scholarships work. It's kind of the 101. Here's what you need to know. Here's what you should be doing. timeline, the whole deal, terminology, right? And then what we're really busy with this time of year, walking through the CSS profile, right? In December, we'll be walking through the FAFSA. Then we'll come back, talk about private scholarships, talk about the IDOC and verification process. Once we get award letters back, we'll help families understand, how do I understand what I'm looking at, right? What is my offer? And then how do I appeal? How do I go back to these colleges to try to get some more money? And then finally, after May 1st, we'll be educating everybody on, okay, I know where I'm going. How am I going to pay the bill? Or I have to take a loan. What loan should my family take? We always speak with two experts. So whichever one of us is not speaking can be in the Q&A, which that reminds me, please bring all your questions right now. You can ask us about anything, right? It doesn't have to be related to the CSS or the FAFSA, but put all your questions in the Q&A. And again, it can be about anything. And it's the same thing we tell parents, right? You can be anonymous. If you have a tricky situation at home, ask us, right? And we just want to be a resource for them and for you. We also have a dedicated email just for school counselors. That is counselor@collegeaidpro.com. That's just for you guys. We have eyes on it all day, every day during business hours. We try to be really responsive there. So any questions you have, we just want to be one of the first places you guys look to be a source of truth. Actually, kind of a cool story. So this is our software. Let me actually get out of this. Is a family software. I'll get into my platform here, but we got a really cool. Sorry, guys. What we think is a cool victory. So we had a family that is working with us that is trying was really in a bind whether or not they could apply ED to Duke. And it was all about, whether or not they could afford it. And our net price calculator, which I'll show you in a second here, had them paying $10,000 a year for college, for Duke. Sorry, not for college, for Duke specifically. Duke's net price calculator was telling them $50,000 a year. Obviously, this huge discrepancy. They were very upset. They didn't know what to do, who to believe. And I was standing tall on our projections in telling them that, as most of you know, a lot of these net price calculators are garbage. And, I totally get it. It's disconcerting when Duke's own net price calculator is telling you something that's way out of your affordability range, and we're telling you can't afford it. You don't want your daughter to be heartbroken. It's quite a lot of hemming and hawing, but our Justin Griffin, who's our kind of lead data analyst, he worked very hard with Duke, nag them, finally got in front of some decision makers there and said, look, at your net price calculator does not put a cap on home equity. Okay. And that's the only asset this family has. And they have a very low income. We know that you don't look at all the home equity, but your net price calculator is acting as if it does. And they said, you're absolutely right. Thank you. And Duke did the right thing. This is credit to Duke here, made an immediate change to their net price calculator. And so this family now is like incredibly relieved. They're going ED. And now they know if she's fortunate enough to get accepted, and we all know how hard Duke is, but she is, incredibly talented kid. She's got a shot. It's going to be affordable, right? So that's one anecdote, but it just goes to show you how critical it is to have a good idea of what you're going to be paying, and it works both ways. Obviously, you don't want to expect, you hate to expect it to be affordable and then it's not. But so many people are just kind of trusting the college's net price calculator and saying, we can't apply there, or we can't apply ED there, whatever. So anyways, I think that's helpful because, we oftentimes, and you guys that follow us, refer to ourselves as a source of truth. And that's a great example of why we can kind of stand tall on that talk track. But
and a question came in the chat about, is there one source to see if schools are CSS? Yes, you can go in if you're in our software and you click on more info on any of the schools, it'll say either institutional or FAFSA. And if it says institutional, that means it's a CSS. College Board has a list. I always tell people, be a little careful because I don't know how much they update their list. We are constantly updating our software. So that's a big perk for families.
Yeah, exactly. So great question, right? Those are the type of questions that we love, and they're important. And we'll always say, look, go cross-reference it, right? And again, check with the colleges themselves, double check their financial aid website. But again, we got folks that they're full-time job description is to make sure that we're as accurate as possible, up to date as possible. Again, we love those victories when we can actually get colleges to make changes on their end, right? So and this is what it is, right? A lot of you school counselors that partner with us know you have access to this as school counselors, and also your families have access to their own account, so they can onboard themselves and find out what these colleges are actually going to cost them, right? Ignore the sticker prices. What are you going to pay at these particular colleges, right? For every college in the country, we have every scholarship that they offer, the qualifications for each, and we're really good at projecting, what is your kid going to get, right? And they also have the opportunity to search just based on who's going to give us the most in financial aid, who's going to give us the most in scholarships, and as that pertains to their admissions preferences, right? In terms of proximity to their house, majors, whatever those big factors are. And then we want to help them figure out who's going to be affordable, right? Over the course of 4 years, when we bake in inflation and siblings going in and out, how much are we going to have to borrow, if anything, at each of these schools? And does that fit within our family's budget, right? And then when it is time to find private scholarships, we've got every private scholarship in the country baked into here, so we'll make sure that they are focusing their efforts appropriately, line by line guidance through the FAFSA, through the CSS profile. This part of the platform allows them to upload their offers, their award letter offers, once they're accepted, and we'll tell you, did you get a good deal? Did BC give you guys a fair shake based on your family's profile and how they hold themselves out to do business? So again, the long and the short of it is that we want to provide education on a high level for families at every stage of this process, and then make sure that they have their own tool to use at home, and you guys as well as school counselors, to make sure that, again, we are getting this affordability piece right. Because something that we say all the time, I think one of the biggest challenges you all have as counselors is you can recommend the appropriate colleges for your students in your sleep, right? Based on their academics and who they are, who's going to be the right cultural fit, right? You can do that in your sleep, but most school counselors are flying completely blind in terms of how that fits into their the affordability profile, right? Am I making recommendations that are going to be in this family's budget? I think that's really hard to say. So we're trying to fill that gap is one of the things that we are hoping to accomplish. All right, Peggy, I've rambled long enough. I think you can.
All right, so let me share my screen here, and let's.
Oh, sorry, Peggy. You know what? I have not rambled long enough. That might have been a new record for me for earliest interruption. What do you think? Pretty
That
close.
is the record, yes.
Yeah.
I haven't even gone to total screen share yet.
I know, buddy. Well, look at so I this link that I just put in the chat, that is for Anne Marie Sanderson, who is our high school partnerships coordinator. If you don't partner with us already, book some time with her. Okay, number one, she's a doll. You'll be better for it. Okay, but she's gonna learn a little bit. What's that?
She's on here too. She already put her link in, but
there you go. Oh, you already did share. But she'll learn more about your high school, what resources you provide currently, socioeconomics and demographics, what support you think you need, and we'll try to customize how can we help you, right? And just about 95% of the school partners we work with, we're completely free, right? There are a small percentage of schools that purchased our software on behalf of their families, but that's most of the folks that we work with. It's completely free. So if you're concerned about budget, please don't be. We want to talk to you. We want to see how we can support you. And yeah, that's Anne Marie's calendar link if you want to learn more.
All right. So let's talk. I want to give just a quick overview of where we are with the FAFSA. As all of you know, it's not live for everybody yet. That'll be hopefully by December 1. But it is live in really small groups. The main thing for your families, if they're not in like one of these beta groups, get the FSA IDs and passwords. Just get that done. Every year, we have parents at the last minute, deadlines are approaching for getting forms in, and they're still waiting for approval because Social Security Administration signs off and says, yes, that person is who they say they are, you're good to go, and the ID gets approved, and then they keep it for the 4 years to use it. So just tell your kids, your students, and the parents to get that done. If parents are married, filing jointly, one parent needs to get it. If they have it for an older child, they're good to go. They don't need one per student. That's a common question. If they're divorced, then only the custodial parent is going to get that ID. And the custodial parent is the parent who provides the most financial support on a year look back from when they're submitting that form. And this is a massive planning opportunity for divorced and separated families, because a lot of them are close to 50-50, or they are 50-50. And then we can help them have whichever parent is more beneficial to be submitting that form and being the custodial parent, to actually be the custodial parent, have them spend a little bit more money. And parents, like, they usually need a little help around this. It's a little stressful, and it can be even more stressful if they don't communicate well between them, the two parents. So big opportunity there that could mean a lot more money, but only the custodial parent. And as we're going to get into the CSS in a minute, that custodial parent is also considered the custodial parent when they're submitting the CSS profile, if they have those schools on their list as well. There's other different, not as common, married filing separately, then both parents have to get it. But mostly it's divorced separated, the one parent, and married, still the one parent gets it for the couple, because it's pulling in all of their tax information. So that's a nice thing to tell families. I know you can't do anything right now to get into the FAFSA, but at least get this done, make sure it's approved, and you're good to go. Just for all of you, this is how the Department of Ed is doing this based on feedback. They started a beta 1, which actually ended yesterday. Just read an article last night that I shared with the team. It went well, like maybe less than 700 students. So very, very tiny, and they're troubleshooting the tech as they go. You might have kids that come and say, hey, I was invited to do beta 1, and now into beta 2. That's great. They can choose. They've got to follow the steps that, from what I've seen, the entities that have reached out very clearly laid out what the family needs to do to submit the FAFSA. It might be a live in-person FAFSA submission session. That was a requirement in beta 1. So they just need to read all the directions and follow them if they want to be a part of these betas. So beta 2 started yesterday. So now it's going to be, instead of hundreds of kids, thousands. Then beta 3 and 4, early November, mid-November. Then we're getting into 10,000, which still isn't a lot, right? We still have a lot more, but good news that I read last night, that they're getting through these tech glitches, which is the whole point of doing it this way, instead of like last year where they just go live and there's just a lot of problems. So far so good. We'll keep our fingers crossed on the FAFSA front, get the FSA IDs. So as we all know, CSS is live, and a lot of your students and families would probably have at least one of these schools on their list. So they can get going on this, and they actually need to, because depending on how they're applying for admission, there could be a November 1 deadline to get this in. These schools, they want the CSS. They're not waiting for a deadline, a FAFSA deadline. They want to get the CSS in. And last year they were giving out those financial aid award letters that Matt was talking about, and just estimating the federal aid, because they know the family's financials, and they can know, okay, this is a Pell family or not, subsidized loans, all that fun stuff. So it's live, good to go, going in under the student's College Board credentials. So no need to create a special ID like the FAFSA. So that's a little bit easier. The key differences here between the FAFSA and the CSS, and these changed a little bit with the new FAFSA from last year, but primary home equity, if your families own the home they live in, have a mortgage, that is considered a liquid asset. Matt gave the example that Justin went through and talked to Duke. It was all about that home equity. That was a key thing. That's an area where we help a lot of families. I'm going to show you a screenshot of that in the CSS profile in a minute. Divorced and separated families, both parents are sending in that the CSS. The custodial parent is sending in the CSS profile with their student, and the non-custodial parent, per that FAFSA definition, is sending in the non-custodial profile. The schools see both of them. There are a few schools that don't look at the non-custodial parent. We have that built into our software. It's not the norm. But that's a great planning opportunity for families that have a non-custodial parent that has sizable income and assets. Business owners, that both forms now. I mean, the FAFSA, that was a change. They want to know the value of your business. The CSS wants to know a lot about businesses. And that's another area where people, they need some support, because people will overvalue their business. Some businesses, my business that I had before I joined CAP, it really had zero value. If I got hit by a bus, God forbid, it was me, right? So, and sometimes parents don't get that, and sometimes they'll overvalue. If you have some families and you know that the non-custodial parent is not going to submit that CSS, and there's maybe some emotional reasons why the student does not have contact, or they don't know where the parent is, there's a lot of different scenarios. Just planting the seed, there is a non-custodial waiver that the other parent literally has to go school by school and submit it. But if it's a valid reason, it's well worth that person's time, because if they waive that other parent, they don't waive that other parent, then they won't give that family any institutional aid, which could be huge, huge money left on the table. So that's high level how the CSS works. Let's just look at a few screenshots. Yeah.
Peg, got a couple questions here around who requires a CSS, who doesn't. Again, right, and I think again that's baked into our platform. We would also have you go check out College Board's website, and then really I would say the most reliable place, albeit in a manual process, is to go to the specific college's financial aid website. I do want to flag a interesting change for this year. I saw a bunch of East Coast school counselors are on here, and one of our more popular state flagship institutions, excuse me, is the University of Vermont, right? UVM, for obviously for New England, but a lot of mid-Atlantic families apply there as well. Really surprising, they're requiring the CSS profile this year. That's brand new. We're digging deeper as to the why. I think the most reliable intel we're getting back so far is just to help them accelerate the timeline on this, right? So they don't have to wait for the FAFSA like last year. Hopefully get out some awards earlier. Again, our big get is, are they making institutional changes as to how they award aid? Are they going to be considering home equity now, for example, like the University of Michigan, or UNC Chapel Hill does? And again, those are two state schools that require the CSS profile. But I just wanted to flag that one in particular because it's easy to fly under the radar. You would just assume state school, they're FAFSA only. But again, I know a lot of your families will be applying to UVM. Make sure that you make them aware that CSS profile is required, and that's brand new.
Yeah, and we're actively updating that stuff. I mean, the latest I saw from, again, Justin Griffin, our lead data analyst, was they're being a little loosey-goosey about how they're going to use it. They're not giving us we're doing the FAFSA federal methodology, but we just want to get the data ahead of time. So that's just something for families to understand and be all over that. If UVM and a few other schools are doing it as well, are on the list. So good share there. All right. So they need to put in the colleges. This isn't really rocket science. Our suggestion is just search by the college name. I had somebody else on another webinar say, oh, well, one of our pros, oh, we'll search by the CSS code number. To me, you got to go look that up. Why have another step in the process? And then just obviously they need to make sure they pick the right school, right? Vanderbilt undergrad is right there. They don't want the med school or the law school, but pretty straightforward. And then they just ask a bunch of questions. A lot of parents get stressed out about, well, what if my child doesn't know if they're going to do early action or early decision yet? Don't worry about it. They're giving deadlines. They're providing deadlines. College Board, that's why they ask this. It's not anything the college is going to specifically go by. So if they put the wrong thing, it's not the end of the world. They're going to ask, obviously, a lot of information about the parents. A big one is social security number, and that is not a required question. And I'll talk about required questions in a minute. This is really up to the families. They also ask it for the student. With the student, it's used for tracking at a lot of schools. So some parents are just like, I'm not sharing stuff I don't need to, fine. But realize that that could be a tracking issue. They might use it for the parents as well. So this is really just their choice if they want to provide it. There, as all of you know, I'm sure they're going to be uploading all their tax returns anyways. So they're going to see a lot of their information, including their socials. But it is what it is. Highest level of education. I always tell people, don't share that. Don't share that if you've got a PhD. The colleges are going to form assumptions based on what's put in there. They want to put their best foot forward. And I always tell people, like, my 3 commandments here are don't overshare, don't overestimate, and be honest. That's really how they want to do things here. So you'll see that show up as I'm showing you some other slides here. So the required piece, this is a big one that at CAP, it's not across the board because we always tell people we got to meet with you one-on-one to get into nitty-gritty. But in general, there's a lot of questions on this form that are not required. And you see here, it says required, right? Obviously, if it's required, you got to have a 0 there. If there's no answer, you can't get past it. If it's required, put the honest answer. But in other places throughout, it's not required. The other thing I tell parents, and I just had a mom the other day, she's like, oh shoot, I messed up. If it's not required and they hit the yes or no, at that point, all they can do is toggle. They can't get rid of the no that they put. So I always tell families that just so they know. Now, if they hit it and they deal with it. You know, the key stuff, you saw adjusted gross income, they need to know wages, very clear. They tell you right where it comes from. Some of this other stuff off the tax return isn't required. So if families don't want to be stressed about it, again, they're going to see their tax returns. This is not meant to be dishonest or hiding stuff. Just it's meant to, hey, don't overshare, and they can go look this up if it matters. It's all part of the adjusted gross income anyways. Then they ask, there's all these little drop downs and they ask about earnings. This is a big one that parents, what do they mean by that? They can click on the drop down and see what College Board is sharing to try and clear up any confusion. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It just depends on the question. But these are big ones that they need and the colleges need. Taxes, high taxes are actually a good thing in financial aid because the more you pay in tax, the less you have to pay for college. So that SAI is going to go down. People like to share other lines, but line 22, they need to follow directions and put in line 22. It doesn't include the self-employment tax, but they know you're self-employed and that's going to get pulled in on the back end. They know that there's extra expenses for those families. Great change they made a couple years ago. If a family has an adjusted gross income under 100,000, automatic fee waiver, or if they're in any of these federal benefit programs and they click any of these, they're going to get a message that says you won't have to pay. So that's great, especially if there's a bunch of schools. You can save a little bit of money, which is always nice, right?
Peg, let me just chime in there too. If somebody's close, let's say they're not automatically eligible for the fee waiver, but they got 4 kids and they're making $105,000 living outside of New York City, every dollar counts, right? So they should still, or you on their behalf or together, whatever, we would encourage them still to reach out to College Board to make that ask. We've seen them have some wiggle room there, right? And I'm sure you guys all know this too, but so many colleges, if you just make the ask, will waive their application fee from an admission standpoint too, right? Most colleges, there's exceptions, but most colleges, if you just ask, they'll waive the admissions fee. Again, I'm sure that's day one stuff for you all, but in case it's not, always a good thing to share, and parents are appreciative if you're having a direct impact on their bottom line.
Yeah, every little bit. I mean, it's just a constant cha-ching in this process. So every little bit they can save, the better. This slide, this is all of this, what we call untaxed income, which dramatically changed on the FAFSA side. A lot of this got thrown out, most of it, as a matter of fact, with the new FAFSA, which is major for families. Somebody asked, how do we know if they're a CSS school? I'm planting that seed that FAFSA schools could be way better for certain families for certain reasons, and CSS schools on the flip side could be. But this slide, the reason why I put the stars on is because these are things that the CSS profile still asks for, but the FAFSA does not. So certain families, it could really move the needle on what their SAI is. 401k, 403b, typical contributions pre-tax to retirement, what most people do, doesn't show up on the tax return, shows up on your W-2. They want it still. The FAFSA does not. HSA, unless it shows up on the tax return, the FAFSA doesn't want it. Pretty much the CSS is turning over every stone. There's not a lot that they don't look at. Same thing with alimony. Same thing if a family, a military family, is getting a housing allowance. I work with a lot of expats that get allowances for housing as well and might have a car. All these things get added back on the CSS. So they're going to ask for it. That's not new. The new piece is that the FAFSA does not. Same thing here. These are other areas. When they've hit all the ones on the other slide, now they're starting to ask about all of this stuff. And so some of this, again, can really move the needle. So it's just something for families to understand. The affordability between FAFSA only schools and CSS has changed quite a bit with all the FAFSA changes. The other thing that the CSS has been doing forever is they ask you what's going on now, and then they even ask you to project into 2025. So again, they should be honest, but don't overestimate. If you put the minimum amount they think they're going to make, these are required questions. If you're not sure you can afford to put money into your 401k, don't share it. Don't share that. Or if you had to stop it, put accurate numbers. They're not supposed, this is not part of that methodology, but I could tell you stories all day when we're talking to schools with parents, the different things the schools disclose. Oh, we're actually doing this. So they have a lot of leeway with their own money to do what they want. So that families really want to put their best foot forward. And you can see over here, they're asking them to project to 2025. So be honest, but that theme of don't overestimate. Here are some questions. The last one on the right, being required, and this was new as of last year or the year before. I always hated this question, and then they made it required. And, I've brought this up at conferences and over again. Nobody at College Board seems to care what I think, but it is what it is. They ask about the balances in retirement. It's a required question. These other two, though, they're not required, right? So really, that's really our talk track. Don't tell them that you have this and you have this and you have this. It's not going to help, and they don't make it required. So you're not lying, and you just move on. One thing, if a family does not make pre-tax retirement contributions, the screen before, this question doesn't pop up, which is lovely. So I've had some families, they just couldn't afford it in the base year. So that ends up being a great little perk for them that question doesn't pop up. As I said earlier, there's the custodial parent for the divorced and separated families. That's going to be the FAFSA parent. So make sure they understand that. You can't switch between the two in the same school year. The custodial parent can change from school year to school year, or FAFSA to FAFSA, CSS, but not within 1 year. Okay, so they're gonna want to be consistent there. And then if they are divorced or separated, there are some required questions. They're going to ask about the X, and these are required. So something has to go in there. And I've just told people, if I were divorced doing this, I would say, you know what? That's for that person to share, even to the point of what's their occupation. For all you know, they got a promotion, whatever. I just say, put unknown. They're going to do their non-custodial profile. They're going to share, because especially with numbers, the last thing you want to do is say, well, I thought he was going to do this, and you put a higher number than he does. Those schools will most likely look at the higher number. So I just say, avoid this like the plague. Answer the required questions with unknown or zero. That's usually the best play. Child support, they're going to ask all about that. On the FAFSA, it's an asset. It is included. It's not income. The CSS, they haven't really come forward and said that they changed this. So I think they're still looking at it as income. But again, they've just got to look, if anything's required, then they have to put that in. All right, housing, like Matt touched on, I touched on, that primary home, they're gonna ask, do you own your home? And then they're gonna ask, when did you buy it? What did you buy it for? They're gonna ask for the market value and then your mortgages. Yeah, and I say mortgages because if somebody has a HELOC or, in their primary mortgage, all of that should be disclosed. If they have a HELOC that they've drawn on, that should be part of this. Get that equity down as low as they can. But with the market value, most people overestimate their home. And so there's strategies around that while still being honest, but putting that lowest defensible value minus an IRS value that, 10, 15% can come off for the IRS. So that can move the needle, but you don't want people putting an absurd value for their home because the colleges can look on Zillow. And this is a huge appeal item. We do appeals on this all the time. What did you value your home at? How much equity are you really? Are you looking at all of it? That's not justified. So there's a lot of appeals that go on around that piece. With assets, the non-retirement assets, they're going to ask, and same thing for the kids, the student, checking savings, investments. They're gonna, and these are required, yes, no, do you have other property, all that kind of stuff. So you got to be honest here and answer these questions. They're gonna look at these non-retirement assets. Any other real estate, same thing. You don't want to overvalue it. This is the same old talk track that I've been saying. Be honest. Don't overestimate the values of business, the property, any of this stuff. So there is a little bit of best practice and all of that stuff. On the student side, they do bring up a trust, and they added a few more questions here, which I actually like, because they ask what kind of trust it is and who set it up. So this is an appeal item. If it's a trust, it's very common. It says can't access till the age of 25. Well, why would the college ever use that? The beneficiary, the student, can't access it. So these are all things to think about, but they do call out trust for the student. This question, I would say, Matt, chime in if you don't agree with this. Every parent I've ever talked to is like, what the heck am I supposed to put here? They just don't know. And you have to be really careful because you can put something they can put something that will hurt them. The high level, they need to have good estimates of their SAIs or EFCs, because some of the CSS schools are still using that terminology. If they put more than that, the college will say, oh, lovely. We think they can do this, but they're telling us they can do 45, and we thought they could do 35. It's going to be 45 for sure. So they need to be really careful. This is a case-by-case basis of what they should put here. Parents get nervous if it's too little. Is that going to be a problem getting in? All these sort of things that they get stressed out about. So this one, it can hurt you if you put something too high, but you need to make sure it's reasonable. So something that we handle a lot with families.
I mean, look, at the only thing I'd add, Peg, is that and we have interesting access, right? Because a lot of our colleagues that are team members of ours, they work in financial aid, either currently or formerly. Ryan Callahan, he's the director of financial aid at Harvard Medical School now, but he's worked at a few different really elite institutions. And he would talk about this question a lot because he said, yeah, if they just like Peg said, if they put a number that's higher than we would have had them pay, we'll say thank you, and we would take that higher number. And this is where it's always interesting, where you have human beings making decisions here, where he personally, and again, he said he wasn't alone, this was a lot of his colleagues. If a parent put 0 there or something like that, and again, they had some resources and some reasonable amount of income, he would take that personally and maybe dock their financial aid or say, you know what, if they go to appeal, I'm not going to bother with this person because I don't think that they're reasonable. So I'm going to say no to the appeal. So the takeaway is it matters what you put there. We always think the SAI is a decent kind of foundation to use for a number, unless it's exorbitantly high, and then we'd have some other recommendations there. But yeah,
and if a family is really asset poor but has tons of money in their home, then they wouldn't have as much. I mean, there's just different things to look at. Yeah, because college can look at it and say, if the parents are expecting to put nothing in, they're not going to come anyways, right? They're going to say no if they get, so there's just a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. So these questions, another big one here with relatives. I always tell people, unless you're 100% sure no, so-and-so is giving this, don't put it down, because and I've done this before where I'm backing into awards and with appealing with families. And I'm like, what the heck? I don't get this. And I said, did you put anything on that line? Oh yeah, my mom said she might give us $15,000. I'm like, there you go. They are assuming that's a certainty, which in their defense, if you put it on there, they're going to say, great, that's 10,000, that's 2,000. We don't have to give this family. And if that person doesn't come through with it, you're stuck. You're basically bumping up what you have to pay, meaning the family, right? So just want to be really, really careful with these questions because they look at them very closely. So when they get to the end here, unlike the FAFSA, there is a place to share. There's special circumstances. They can pick one of these. We basically tell people, a lot of people have great stuff to share. Lost my job, whatever it is, we say, save it. Save it until you get that financial aid award letter. And then you can reach out and say, thank you so much for my package. I can't wait to come and be a Bronco in the fall, but let me share something with you. And then they basically, what's called exercise professional judgment. They're kind of saying to the college, hey, go take this into account. If they share it all here and they come back and say, hey, but I told you I have all these medical expenses and my mom's living with me and the grandma, blah, blah. Yeah, we saw that. Thanks. We saw that. And that's built into your award. They keep that card in their pocket, then they can pull it out, right? And that's the idea behind this. And some people, you really kind of have to say, I know you want to share, but wait, please wait. And so that's what we tell people, and we help with appeals all day long. And it's hugely valuable. So a lot of people are like, okay, I'm done. As I'm sure a lot of there is this pool of supplemental questions the colleges can pull from. They might get lucky and there's no supplemental questions, or they might have 15 of them. It just depends on how many schools and what those schools chose. Typically, these are not required. So the parents, again, really don't need to answer it. You can see up here, Harvard saying, what's the make and model of your cars? I think they want to know, do you have 3 Bentleys on the driveway and you're asking for need-based aid, that kind of thing. But that is a piece that might come up for a given family, a few, or might not come up at all. Just depends. And then when they get to the end here, they're able to go through a review process, which we recommend they do, go through, check everything again. If they're not up against a deadline, I usually tell people, go to bed, sleep on it, go back with a fresh set of eyes and do the review. Because you might catch something. If you spent an hour doing this or 2 hours, you might catch something that you wouldn't have caught. And then they're gonna have to pay unless they've got the fees waived, and it'll show everything, but then it'll show 0. Put in the credit card, they submit, and then they're done with that part of the process. They're not done because then there's forms to put in and everything else. But once they submit all that, then if they go back to their child's dashboard in CSS Profile, they can download a copy, which we advise. It'll list all the schools. They can add a school later. And then they're going to see this IDOC pop up. And the schools that use IDOC, that's where they're going to go in and upload all the tax documents. Some schools don't use IDOC. So they're going to be reaching out to the families separately and saying, hey, this is our process. It's important to do that. It usually doesn't have tight deadlines, but they need all that to create those financial aid award letters and give out their institutional aid. You'll notice they can make a correction. We're hoping that people get it right the first time so they don't have to do that. But if something comes up, they can make a correction on the CSS. So that's basically how it's flowing. If you've been in there in past years, the look and feel of it is no different this year. It's virtually almost the same. A few little nuances and questions, but
Yeah, thanks, Peg. That was awesome. And that gives you guys hopefully a really good idea of what this presentation looks like. We went a little bit quicker for you all, knowing that you again kind of have a lot of experience here, right? The CSS profile is not a new term for you and how financial aid works. When we do the presentation for parents, we start at a higher level. Even when we're talking about the CSS profile, we'll start with what is financial aid, right? And then kind of drill down
We'll
to,
talk about an SAI because some people might be coming that don't even know what that is. So we start a little bit up. We even talk about, because a lot of parents are like, why should I submit the forms? My neighbor said not to. We talk about why they should submit these forms and how important. We just didn't go through that with all of you being professionals.
and a couple of you came on and said, hey, do you do this stuff for parents? Right. And that's exactly what we do. Right. That's a point. So I shared Anne Marie's link, meet with her. We'll get a presentation set up or presentation set up for your high school. Alternatively, I just reshared. We are doing this presentation for East Coast high schools a week from today, 10:23, 7 Eastern time. You can share that link with your families. And then I'm going to grab the West Coast and Mountain Time.
Yeah, and while you do that, there's a little few more questions about the fee waiver. That should automatically happen. They don't have to check a box. It'll pop up when they say we made $85,000. That was our adjusted gross income. It'll pop up and say, you're getting the fee waiver. And then at the end where I showed you that screenshot, it'll show all the fees, but it'll say 0. And so
Yeah.
they won't have to, so they don't have to worry about missing a box. There's no code. It just automatically happens.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we got a
somebody put
question.
in a good question about if somebody's remarried. That's a huge question because those two the non-custodial profile and the other profile show up, and we've done a lot of appealing around this where technically they're supposed to look at the two biological parents. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they look at all 4. And so we reach out and we talk to them. So I had a big one with USC this year, back and forth quite a few times. And finally, it was successful for them to take stepdad out. And we
We
were
see a
getting
lot of
different answers from different people in the financial. We don't look at him. It's like, okay, well then take him out. One person was saying, so it's just, you got to have some persistence, patience, and calmness when they're dealing with this appeal process, which is hard. It's hard for families because there's a lot driving. It's a big deal what these schools respond, especially if it's an ED. Yeah,
because so to answer your question, they're going to ask step parent information on the CSS profile.
yeah, they're gonna get it all.
But they're not supposed to count the step parent income or assets, which is hugely important to Peggy's point, because we've seen a lot of even elite colleges play this game. Middlebury, Boston College. I've seen, I don't know, I could go on and on and on. It's not fair to you. Obviously, we saw USC do it, like Peg mentioned. And again, it's not fair to only name 3 because so many do, where they include it even though they're not supposed to. So we will always call them out to say, wait a minute, this award does not align with how you are supposed to be running your business there. Clearly, you counted the step parent income. And almost always they'll say, oh yeah, right. And might come back with tons more money. I'm thinking of Middlebury. It moved the needle $40,000 a year. Okay. Boston College, something similar, but nobody knows this, right? No parents know that this is how colleges are supposed to, again, conduct their business, essentially, right? So that's why we just always want to fact check it, right? Always want to gut check it. Again, that's why we're telling families, upload your award letter. Did you get the correct offer from school ABCD, right? We like to play watchdog there. So yeah, hopefully again that gives you all a good idea and provide some value on the specific content today, right? FAFSA, CSS profile, etc. For those of you that weren't there right at the top, right? If you're not partnering with us already, please reach out to us, talk to us, right? counselor@collegeaidpro.com. That is, we have eyes on that all day, every day. We'll get back to you with any question. I shared Anne Marie's link here where you can book some time with her to learn how we can support you all further. And again, we're doing this every other week. So we will be back here in 2 weeks and very likely, let's see, will we be, we'll still be in October here. So, it'll probably be similar stuff. We'll maybe know more about the FAFSA then. we'll see. But even as soon as any updates come out, we're always sharing that, right? So just pay attention to the any stuff we're sending out, because we'll make sure we always share it out with our school counselor.
Do we send a recording after this? I don't know.
No, I
I'm-
don't. Anne Marie, can you chime in there? Do we send the recording?
I wasn't
think
sure
that, I
about
think
that.
that we do, but you know what? I kind of had that same question, Peg, earlier. I was thinking, but
Yeah, because somebody asked that and I'm not, yep.
okay, all right. So there you
Guru
go.
chimed in. We do send a recording,
There you
yes.
go. So you'll get this recording tomorrow, and yeah, and feel free to share it with anybody you think might be helpful. And yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for everything you do as always. I know this is a crazy, crazy busy time of year, so thanks for taking almost an hour out of your
Yeah,
very busy day.
hang in there during this crazy busy season.
No doubt about it. Thank you,
All
Peggy.
right, take
Bye, guys.
care.